Hello, I'm Michael Marsh. Welcome to the program dedicated to reestablishing constitutional government. First here in Oregon, and then hopefully will be a good example to the rest of the country, and the United States will eventually reestablish their constitutional government. One of the issues that is facing especially the Republicans and the nation at large is what is a natural-born citizen? And I hear people in the media saying that you need to have a parent that's an American citizen. Well, that's for a regular citizen, that would be true. But they use the word natural-born citizen. And that's why I have my guest today, Chris Brumbles, who has actually done some research. And when Barack Obama, the issue came up, I didn't really care because I didn't want him in office anyway. But Ted Cruz, I could have, supported him. I could have voted for him. So I wanted to know what a natural-born citizen was. And I first went to the Bar Association Dictionary, which is Black's Law Dictionary. And they said born in the jurisdiction of the nation, which kind of leaves Ted Cruz out, but allows Marco Rubio. But I don't really trust the Bar Association. I think they're an enemy of the Constitution, so I wanted to have more knowledge. Yeah. And that's why I have you on, Chris, because I understand you've done a little more research than I have.
I have, and it's a very touchy issue with some people, especially since we had 3 people running for president in one sitting that is, none of them are natural-born citizens. As we know, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5 of the Constitution requires that the president and the vice president, anybody who could become the president, be a natural-born citizen. And before we discuss this, we need to figure out why did our founders, first of all, why did they want a natural-born citizen?
Yeah.
Well, if you go back to a letter that, well, let me back up a little bit. John Jay, our first Supreme Court Chief Justice, was not allowed to go to the Constitutional Convention, but he had lots of friends there and he had some influence, and he wrote a letter to George Washington. And in the letter he said, "Permit me to hint, whether it would be wise and seasonable to provide a strong check to the admission of foreigners into the administration of our national government, and to declare expressly that the command-in-chief of the American Army shall not be given to nor devolve on any but a natural-born citizen." I think that's where it first came up. Our founding fathers were English subjects before they became citizens of this country. And they had a history of English history, and they had a long history of foreign invasions and foreign influence. And matter of fact, the national language for England was France for several hundred years. Yeah. And I think that came in after William the Conqueror came in from Normandy and took over England. But people need to remember that our Constitution is a compact. It's like a contract, but they call it a compact because it's among states. And so, like any other contract, you have to go back to the meeting of the mind, see what they were talking about, see what they meant at that time. Well, I know from research, and it doesn't take very much research to figure it out, but our founding fathers used Vattel's Law of Nations to help them form the Constitution. That's one of the things they used.
Yeah, I've noticed that, like it's mentioned in both the Constitution, Article 1, and in the Declaration of Independence. And both times, I hadn't done the research, so it was a little bit confusing because, for instance, in the Constitution, it talks about piracy and privateers.
Yeah.
Under the law of nations. Okay.
It says that Congress has the right to to enforce the law of nations. Yes.
Yeah. But in reality, each government had different, like Spain and England had different rules on what, whether or not they even allowed recognized piracy and all that. And in the Declaration of Independence, it says they were laying this out in accordance with the law of nations, and it didn't make any sense. But there was a book. It wasn't an actual treaty or anything. It was an actual the book.
Yes, he has. In Section 212 of Vattel's Law of Nations, it talks about it defines what a natural-born citizen is. And by the way, our Supreme Court have used Vattel's Law of Nations as a reference in several court cases. But if you go back to this, Ben Franklin wrote a letter, and in part of the letter it says, "I am much obliged by the kind present you have made of us of your edition of Vattel. It came to us in good season, when the circumstances of a rising state made it necessary frequently to consult the law of nations." So he admits right there, and you can find other references by Alexander Hamilton and other people, but he admits that they used it. And the problem comes when, see, it was written in French, and that was the international language at the time.
Yeah.
And they don't, when they translate the law of nations into English, they don't have a word for natural-born citizen. They say native. Well, when it was translated into English in, I believe it was 1797 or no, 1789, I believe, and they translated it into English. It said natural-born citizens instead of natives, so people have problems with that. But some people think natives and natural-born citizens go together.
Yeah.
But what our founders did was, well, the whole world, citizenship, it's genetically inherited, like your eye color. Yeah. And here's something else interesting. Well, I'll get to that later. This subject has been deliberately twisted and to made complicated by people like progressives and people who hate the Constitution that are trying to change it. If you read Harvard Law Review, it starts out saying that a natural-born citizen can be one parent, and then by the end, it's one parent in a foreign country having a kid can be president. Yeah. It makes no sense. That's like saying Putin, who's the president of Russia, could get an American woman, have a kid in India, and raise it up to hate America and be our president. They wanted to avoid all those loyalties to foreign countries. They wanted the president of the strongest army in the world to only be loyal to this country. So, but I found something better than the Law of Nations. I went clear back and found there was a Dr. Ramsey, Dave Ramsey, who was a historian, very well respected man. He was at 2 of the constitutional conventions. He was the acting president of the Congress assembled. And he wrote a dissertation, and it's called I've actually got a bunch of notes on it, but it's called The Dissertation of the Manner of Acquiring Character and Privileges of a Citizen of the United States. And he defines, the same way the Law of Nations does, he defines a natural-born citizen as a person born on the soil to 2 citizen parents. Now, have you ever heard of coverture, the coverture doctrine?
Vaguely.
Our founders, the coverture doctrine was in effect back then.
Okay.
And what that said was basically a woman could buy property, but if she got married, they became one. So 1 + 1 = 1, and the man is the one. So that's why you still see today women will write their names Mr. John Smith or Mrs. John Smith or something like that. So actually a female, if she was married to the man, it didn't matter about her citizenship. She automatically became a citizen if he was a citizen. But the father is very important, and Barack Obama already admits his dad is not a citizen.
Yeah.
Neither is Ted Cruz. I mean, I like Ted Cruz, but He's not a natural-born citizen. Neither is Rubio, and neither was Jindal. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And Rubio's parents, both of his parents are from a foreign country,
Yeah.
and did not become a natural-born citizen until he was about, I don't know if it was either 4 or 7. I can't remember. Got all these stuff in my head. But it's just very sad that these people are getting away with this, and they're perverting our Constitution. It's not what our founders intended.
Yeah, and the Constitution, you know, it does differentiate, you know, like for the legislature, Congress, all you have to do is be a citizen. In fact, you can be a naturalized citizen. It says you have to have been a citizen for 7 years to be in Congress. So obviously, if they're saying regular citizen for legislature, and then they're saying natural born citizen for the presidency, they have two different standards in mind.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Anybody can be a citizen. All
Yeah.
you have to do is be born here.
Yeah.
If people need to go and read Vattel's Law of Nations, just read section 212 through 217, and it explains every different kind of citizenship. It does say if you're born on the sea, in our water, you're not. It's like on our land. If you're out in the open ocean, well, the vessels are American, so you're still American citizen. But if you're born in a foreign country, it says you're not a citizen. You take over. You take over if your father has moved there. That part's a little confusing. But obviously, if your father moves to a foreign land, he's taken up residence there, and you're born there, you're a citizen of that land. And they didn't recognize dual citizenship back there like they do
No.
now.
Now, what about, okay, like Ted Cruz, you know, because he is the one that I like.
Until you look who's supporting him.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a problem. And I do have a problem with what he did to Ben Carson in Iowa. Yeah. But his father was a legal resident of the United States. Would that count? Or you
No, his
know,
father did not become a citizen until about 5 or 6 years ago.
yeah.
You know, his father would have had to, according to the Law of Nations, according to Dr. Ramsay, his father would had to have been a citizen before he was born. And see, I thought it was even the reason I found out about it. I got in an argument with a friend of mine who's pretty smart. Not an argument, a debate, kind of.
Yeah.
And then it cut real short because I admit when I don't know something, and I said, I really haven't studied this, so I'm going to go back and see if you're right. And I tell everybody whenever I talk about any subject, don't take my word for it. Go check it out.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to find. But you got a lot of people out there trying to redefine terms and change things so they can get around the Constitution.
Yeah. Including some people that say they're in favor of the Constitution.
Yeah.
Trying to save it.
If I could just read this quote on this, Dr. Ramsay, this Professor Page Smith of the University of California at Los Angeles, published an extensive study of Ramsay's history of the American Revolution, and because he was one of the first historians, very well respected historian, to publish something on the revolution. He was there, he was involved, he knew what was going on, in which he stressed the advantage that Ramsay had because of being involved in the events of which he wrote and the wisdom he exercised in taking advantage of this opportunity. And this is a quote, in quotes, "The generosity of mind and spirit which marks his pages, his critical sense, his balanced judgment and compassion," Professor Smith concluded, "are gifts that were uniquely his own and that clearly entitle him to an honorable position in front of the rank of American historians." So, I mean, lately he's got people saying, hey, this guy knew what he was talking about. He was there. He was well respected. I haven't found anybody who said he was full of baloney.
Yeah.
So, but I've heard all the arguments. Well, it hasn't been defined by law yet. Well, half the words in the Constitution haven't been defined by law. It's not a dictionary. The Constitution was written so that we could understand it. Our founder said that, and the Supreme Court has agreed. And in fact, there was in I think it was 1828. Noah Webster wrote a dictionary so that we wouldn't forget what they meant by the terms in the Constitution back then. And I bought the book. Unfortunately, it doesn't have natural born citizen. in it.
Yeah, that was my second thing I did after looking at blacks. I went to Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary for the same meaning, because it is, he knew the people and he wanted to preserve it, the language of the time.
Very interesting.
Although it does, under natural, the word natural, it does say native.
Yeah, a lot of people.
One of the definitions, but it doesn't have natural born citizen on it.
And you know, that's what Thomas Paine defined people in 3 categories: foreigner, half native, or native. So that's what he meant by that. He meant natural born citizen. So he figured. Now, obviously, it's now if a guy was a citizen, had a kid with a woman he wasn't married to, and she was a foreigner, he wouldn't be a natural born citizen. But if they were married, because of the coverture doctrine, he would be a citizen. A natural born citizen. It's not really that complicated. People just got to get out and look it up.
Yeah. So where would they go? They would look up Dr. David Ramsay.
Ramsay. It's Ramsay.
And he has written quite a few things.
He's written history of the Revolutionary War, and he that I know of, and he's written this dissertation. He probably wrote quite a bit more because he was a historian. And
this can all be found on Google, or
well,
you have to find the books.
Yeah, you might have to look sometime. You know, the best place to go to look up anything constitutional is Publia Hulda blog. That's Publia, and then Hulda, Huldah. And this woman is a retired lawyer, and she is in love with the Federalist Papers, the Constitution, the Anti-Federalist. She's got me reading the Anti-Federalist Papers now, and she doesn't only just. And I wish I would have found her when I was doing my research, because I've went back to her and she had everything that I found. But it took me a couple months, or not a couple months, but about 30 days. But she'll talk about whatever subject she's talking about, and she gives you where to find it, so you can go look it up for yourself. So it's and I listen to Chris Ann Hall. She has a video site, or a website called Liberty First, and she puts out a lot of information on that. But there's an endless, a plethora of information out there. But people really should read the original history, original documents, so they don't get, because revisionism happens on both sides of the line, right or left. So it's good to go find out for yourself. And I have found that a lot of people who like Ted Cruz do not like the truth. I mean, it's crazy. He's born in Canada. His dad was born in Cuba. His mom's an American, I guess. Yeah. But when I tell them, well, that's like Putin. Put Putin in his dad's place. Is that still okay?
Really?
Well, it's not the same. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same. He's a foreigner. But I don't know why Cruz's dad went and became a citizen. Well, I do, because his son was going to run for president.
Yeah, but did it kind of late.
I cannot believe, I just can't believe that Rubio and Ted Cruz are running for president. I can't believe that the people have not stood up and stopped that. Yeah. And once again, I like Ted Cruz. I like what he does in the Senate, but I do not like who's backing him, and I think it could be another setup. I think they all are.
Yeah. This could be our last election.
I hope not. I hope not.
Yeah, I hope
Oath Keepers doing what they can to make sure that isn't true. Yeah. And by the way, if I could just say something about Oath Keepers, we've been called domestic terrorists and all that. We are not terrorists. We are anti-terrorists. We're not anti-government, but we do favor the government following the Constitution and staying to the limited size they're supposed to, and minding their own business and letting us have liberty. Not letting us have, liberty is ours. They need to leave our liberty alone. And for goodness sake, if they take an oath, a sacred oath, they need to follow it.
And like when I went in the Army, I mean, that was a long time ago. first thing they did was have us raise our hand and
Mhm.
swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States.
Too many of them now think it's just a ritual. It's not a ritual. It's you're swearing your deepest oath, and that's why you don't have to swear it by God, but you have to either swear to God or you have to give your most solemn promise. And it's just a joke. I talked to a lot of these representatives and senators, and they just turn their head and walk away if you talk about the Constitution.
Oh yeah.
And now they're calling, if you believe in the Constitution, they're calling you a domestic terrorist. If you believe in your right to protect yourself, you're a, which, you know, Marxist regimes always have to turn the opposition into a villain. They always do, and that's what we're seeing, I think.
We are.
But this right here, if people would just pick this up and read it, and by the way, any law that doesn't follow this is not, the Supreme Court has said several times, it is not a law. It's illegal. It's what they call it, void ab initio, from the start. It never existed, but they uphold them like they're laws.
Oh yeah.
And now they're letting the bureaucracies write laws.
Yeah, that's definitely, you know, because the Constitution definitely says Congress shall make laws.
Congress
it doesn't
is
say
the one who
anything
can.
about bureaucracy making any laws.
Right. Well, it's tyranny. It's tyranny. The president's trying to usurp his authority over Congress. And, I mean, look, the judicial is writing legislation from the bench and redefining words and changing everything around. It's crazy.
Yeah. And that's a very dangerous spot we're in right now, especially with Scalia dying.
Yeah.
And my first reaction was, because of who he is, and he is an originalist of the Constitution, they killed him.
Well,
But then, you know, my second thought is, he's 79 years old. People die when they're 79.
right.
So, you know, I don't know. Yeah. So, but
Well, I hope that didn't happen, but we'll never know.
we won't.
They burn the body right away.
Yeah.
And who knows? There's so many psyops going on out there. Our government's playing us for full. They use us like puppets. I mean, they got the media in their pocket doing their bidding, and nobody knows what's up or down, and it's crazy. And
Yeah, it's really insane. And whoever the next president is, they're going to have probably another, at least 3, maybe 4 more besides Scalia to replace. And the whole Constitution could be abolished very shortly.
well, I'm interested you said that, because I think people need to look up, publicly hold a blog and read about Article 5 convention, because the left has been after an Article 5 convention for 50 years. They have a new constitution they've rewritten 40 times. President's already signed. People think that they're going to go into an Article 5 convention and that the states are going to get to vote on it. But if they abolish our Constitution, they don't need the states to sign on to it, I guess. I guess the president can just sign it and be it. And that thing is scary, especially they need that for the Agenda 30. The only ways they can make Agenda 30 happen in the next 14 years is take our guns and take our Constitution. And I'm afraid the people are so dumbed down now, they're going to let it happen.
Well, there is, you know, like the majority of the people probably don't know why we have a Second Amendment, but both people on both sides of the aisle on the Second Amendment know the power, the actual reality of the Second Amendment.
People need to understand that the Second Amendment is not our right. The Second Amendment doesn't give us any rights. It's supposed to keep the government from usurping our rights.
Yeah.
We were born with our rights. Read the Declaration of Independence. We were born with our rights, and one of my pet peeves is when somebody says, your Second Amendment right or your constitutional right, because the Constitution gives us no rights.
No.
It chains the government. Only thing is, they're not obeying it, and the checks and balances aren't working because they're all crooks. And
some of them, you know, like Hillary Clinton, the only reason she doesn't go to jail because the federal Justice Department is corrupt.
well, and that thing about Justice Scalia, I've heard that a bunch of times, but I can't. I have to have proof. I can't say something
and
like that
I
unless
said,
I know.
You know, he's 79 years old. People 79
Yeah, I know. I'm not
die.
gonna last till 79.
Yeah, they do die of natural causes.
I like Justice Scalia. I don't think he was perfect. He did make some mistakes, but he was right in almost everything.
I think he had the right heart.
Right.
And, you know, he was right more often than wrong, which is an improvement.
And people got to understand the Supreme Court is not the ultimate arbiter of the Constitution.
No.
They gave themselves that power.
Yeah.
It's not in here anywhere in this Constitution that says that they are the ultimate arbiter. The Constitution is the ultimate arbiter. And if I could say real quick, I've listened to Dr. Edwin Vieira, who got two or three doctrines from Harvard. He's a constitutional attorney. He said when he was going to be a constitutional attorney, they didn't even study the Constitution. What they do is they study case books. They used to study law books. They study case books, which is precedents, and and what he said in his own words, the difference between case books and the Constitution, case law could be wrong or right. The Constitution is neither wrong or right, it just is. Yeah. So to follow this, you can't have some just judicial opinion override it.
Okay, so we've got a little over a minute, so quickly tell us what the founders meant by a natural born citizen.
Okay. A natural born citizen is a person born on our soil who has two citizen parents before his birth. They can't. So if you have two people come over from India and they have a child and then they get naturalized and they have another child, the second child will be a natural born citizen, the first will not. So it's pretty simple.
So Nikki Haley, who a lot of people talk about being vice president, probably does not qualify.
I don't know who Nikki Haley is. That's the first time.
She's a South Carolina governor.
Oh,
her parents
my
came
goodness,
from
we
India.
don't want her. I don't know. I'm from North Carolina originally. I love South Carolina, but some of the politics back there, I don't get it.
Especially the last year or so.
They just passed a law that I think Charlotte, North Carolina is going to let transgenders go into women's dressing rooms, and that's not a good thing.
No.
For the kids.
And we're out of time, and I thank you for
Thank
coming
you
on the program.
asking me again. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.